Good afternoon. My name is Caroline Eldelstam. I'm the president of the Eldelstam Foundation. We're here today to have a public conversation regarding the Eldelstam Prize laureate 2024, Mr Dawit Isaak, who received the prize because of his outstanding contributions and his exceptional courage within the defense of human rights and in standing up for freedom of expression. So I will talk about global responsibility and accountability today. And I will now leave the word to Ms. Elisabeth, who is chairperson of the support committee of Dawit Isaak. I leave the floor to you, Elisabeth. Thank you.
Hello everyone, it's okay that we are sitting down, you are, and I would like to start by presenting our very fine panel, and I will start with 𝐒𝐂𝐿𝐿. She's a journalist from Eritrea originally. In 2009, you worked at a radio channel and were together with 30 other journalists who were arrested. You spent 6 years in prison and without, like Dawit Isaak and all other colleagues, without trial and without any indictment. In December, you managed to flee to Uganda. In December 2018, is that correct? March, sorry. And you started off as a resident for PEN journalists, writers in exile program. So I will present the others and then I will come back to you. And Isaak, I don't think he needs a lot of presentation. He's the younger brother of Dawit Isaak. He was the one who took the sole responsibility, I would say, in the beginning to try and raise the issue of the arrest of Dawit Isaak. And then we have, to represent civil society organizations, we have Maja Åberg. She's a long-standing member of Amnesty International. She's been working with Dawit Isaak's case for many, many years. And you are the advocacy officer of Amnesty International. So you deal a lot with the international organization, with the parliament, with the foreign ministry in Sweden and so on. And then we have EUTELSAT. I would say, apart from the family, the person in Sweden who knows most about Dawit Isaak's case. You are a journalist and you're also board member of Reporters Without Borders many years, and you've been doing a lot, both internationally and also nationally, about the case of Dawit Isaak. And last but not least, we have Karin Olsson, who is the Deputy Chief Editor of Expressen. We will talk a bit about how slow media was to react. But once it got started, I would say that Expressen took the lead, and you've been doing amazing work, in my opinion, about this case. So now we'll start to ask a few questions to each and every of the panelists, and then there will be a discussion among you all. And you spent 6 years in prison. I know for those of you who were at the seminar yesterday, you heard a bit from 𝐒𝐂𝐿𝐿 about your time, but could you give us a bit of the circumstances surrounding why you were arrested, and also a little about the situation in prison and how you felt? I mean, was there any chance for you to communicate with the outer world or anything like that? So if you give us a brief introduction about what happened when you were arrested and when you got out of prison.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. Thank you for having me again. For the question, why I was in prison and why I fled, it's beyond my knowledge to answer this, but I can tell you that in the day I was other 5 friends and colleagues and I myself released. The commander told us, we arrest you because we ordered to arrest you, We are letting you free because we are to do that. No question beyond that. So this is what I can share with you guys. The situation and the day we are arrested, I was working to the radio, educational radio owned by the Minister of Education, nothing with politics, just education for adults and entertainment programs.
Can I ask you, was this radio channel linked to the government, or was it because free media was?
No, it's owned by the education Minister of Education.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's for the government, but only educational and entertainment programs we were producing. So I worked 5 years, more than 5 years, with Radio Bana, and in 19 February 2009, there was someone for meeting in the previous day, and we were in the corridor for just meeting of the staff, and we were not aware that we were surrounded by military. And then after 40 minutes, the soldiers got into our office and collected us and took us to the very known prison in Eritrea, Eritrea. And other friends, writers, and journalists from Ministry of Information joined us in Eritrea. And then I stayed for 3 months there with many other prisoners. And then after 3 months, they took me to Mysore, more harder and very known prison in Eritrea. So I spent the 5 years and some months there.
How were the conditions in the prison?
As I tried to tell you guys yesterday, as I tried to explain about that, I always compare with the other very harder prisons, because I used to tell people that my family were very lucky because they knew that I was alive. So that having information or about the prison people is privilege in Eritrea. It's almost privilege. So my family, my friends, they were knew that I was alive because I admitted to the hospital many times after the torture made on me in the interrogation room. So I was admitted to the hospital. So this was privilege for me, admitting to the hospital, and my parents aware about my whereabouts was kind of privilege. But we were not allowed to be visited, we were not allowed to have pens, we were not allowed to know what's happening outside of our cell. So it's if you say even a word hi to another prisoner, takes you to punishment. So just I know people who lost their voices because they couldn't communicate with others. They were isolated in a cell, so they lost their voices. I know people there.
You said you were in isolation. Were you all the time in isolation cell, or were you together with other prisoners, even though you couldn't communicate with them?
Yeah. The first 2 years I was in cell alone, but after the hard interrogation and some problems with my health, health issue, they put me together with a lady. She has same issue, health issue, so we were helping each other with her. So the first 2 years I was isolated. The next 4 years, months in hospital and months in the prison. So I was there, and
And then after 6 years you were released, but it didn't go very well, did it? Can you tell us? It didn't go very well. You were released, but what happened then?
Yeah, I released from prison. As I used to say, I was lucky that I was only 6 years in prison. Yeah, only 6 years, with no reason, without due process of law. After that, they sent us to the place we were working, Radio Bana, but Radio Bana was shut down. Now, they ordered us to go to the office and stay there. And then I tried to escape from Eritrea illegally to Ethiopia, and then we captured me again in prison for another.
So you were captured when you tried to
and another 4 months in the same prison. And then I went in the other way, and I'm here until.
Okay. We will come back to you. Now I'll turn to Isaias. How did you learn about your brother's arrest? You were in Sweden then, and what were your first steps, and most of all, what kind of response did you get when you contacted Swedish authorities about your brother's arrest?
Yes.
And also, what kind of reaction did you get from media? Because I also know that you tried to contact media.
Yes, that's true. I will start to say thank you to Eldelstam Foundation for the prize yesterday and for the evening, and thank you especially to Carolina and Karin for amazing work. But to start your question, Elizabeth, it's quite difficult to remember everything. It's 23 years back, but I know exactly where I was when I got information when Dawit was a prisoner. I was on lunch breaks, and I was back to my job. So it was a few days after he got imprisoned, just maybe 26, 28 September. I had asked the Swedish government to give me the document when I called the first time, but I didn't get receive yet. Also, but when I heard about him, he's a prisoner, I immediately called the government and asked them to help me. The response I got from them was, yes, we can't help you because you don't have his ID number, but it's your job to fix it. Yes, but we can't help you, so actually they say, yeah, you don't have any hope, and you're from Eritrea who has 2 double citizens, we can't help you, so we want to tell you that you will not go back to Eritrea because you can't get access from us. So it's already start from very hard time for me or for Dawit. And I try after that to get in touch with different media. I started with my local media in Gothenburg, and they said, just now it's not interesting for us because we have write 42 articles about Eritrea, and we don't know what you say Eritrea, is it kind of Ethiopia? They were most interesting. Then I tried to contact Metro, if you remember that, you can get that on the trap. And they said, I want to write article about Dawit's situation, and the Metro said, this is not interesting for us because our readers is more interesting about the bus is late or the trap is broken, so you should call another media. After that I sent a fax to Swedish Publicistklubben. And then first I called them and said you should send us a fax, but still I didn't get an answer from them.
Have you got it still?
No. So it was very tough, and the media attention was just on 9/11. No one was interested about the poor country Eritrea. and I tried from different. I remember one thing I did was one friend of me, he gave me, he sponsored me with card, letters, and I write to the different publishers, broadcast media. I think it was 35, 40 cards, but nobody was interested. So that was the start of.
A very bad start, but you didn't give up.
No, I didn't give up, and I was also invited to Stora Journalistpriset. I met Karin there a lot of years, and they gave me a chance to speak 5-10 minutes about Dawit, and just around 2010-11, it started a very big media campaign. But in the other side, it was also very difficult because I had a little trust to the Eritrean community here. But the Eritrean community was not interested about Dawit because everybody was interested to get back home, so they didn't want to be involved in what they call politics. Even the former colleague of Dawit wasn't interested, and they said they want to cut my tongue because I spoke about Eritrea. It was personal attack, so it was a horrible situation.
Thank you. Maya from Amnesty. Amnesty, to my knowledge, was the first organization to really get engaged in Dawit's case. You issued something called an urgent action in, was it March or February 2002? So it took some months, but still that was the first. And then you brought up not only Dawit's case, but all the other journalists who had been in prison at the same time. You were there at Amnesty even then, and I know that you've been doing lots and lots of activities since then. But could you tell us a little about Amnesty's work, but also how we engage with other organizations in Sweden? And of course, Amnesty is an international organization, so there are sections all around the world. Is Dawit Isaak an emblematic case in other countries, or is it mainly an interest of the Swedish Amnesty?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yes, we actually we had a discussion at the book fair in Gothenburg earlier with Esaias and also Angela Guay, the daughter of Guay Minhai and Kurdo Baksu is also in this room. And then I heard you tell the story of you had just become a member of Amnesty International a few months ago, and then your brother was detained, and how you went to the Gothenburg office of Amnesty International and met my colleague Katarina, who is still there. And it was the first time I heard that story. But anyway, that eventually resulted in this urgent action that I brought with me. They looked like this back then. And an Amnesty Urgent Action, or Blixtaktion in Swedish, is an international way of getting all of Amnesty's international membership, but also anyone who wants to take action on a case. And often it's used when there is an immediate danger to the person or the people involved, having to do with maybe torture, unlawful arrests, disappearances. We talked about that before. Basically, it's not a disappearance, but it's when you don't know where the person is held. It can also be when there is a risk of execution, for example. And this is, it still happens, so anyone can go onto the Amnesty website to look for urgent actions if you want to get involved. So this was the first thing that Amnesty did as a global campaign for Dawit Isaak, and the 10 colleagues and the 10 journalists that was on this first urgent action, including also 𝐒𝐄𝐂𝐍𝐃, that I know also has ties to Sweden, and several others of the colleagues. Since then, Amnesty has made Dawit Isaak and the other journalists what we call individuals at risk cases, which is a way of letting Amnesty groups all over the world work with the case for longer periods of time. And there are several Amnesty groups that are working on the Dawit Isaak's case. It was interesting, there was a group in Germany who contacted me actually before the 60th birthday of Dawit that we celebrated here in Sweden a while ago, and they were also planning to do things in Germany, which was really nice to hear. Since then, there's been a lot of different types of campaigning for Dawit and his colleagues, but also other prisoners of conscience in Eritrea, and also campaigns regarding human rights as such, all the different human rights violations that go on in the country. It can be different types of membership campaigns. It can be amnesty groups going to their local town square to collect signatures, to ask people to sign letters, to write to the embassy, but also different types of lobby and advocacy campaigns, talking to not just the Swedish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also other countries' ministries, and of course always asking the Eritrean authorities to release him. There's been a lot of activism going on through the years. I know one thing that we talked about when we talked ahead of this call was when we marked the 10th anniversary of the day of the detention. We had a big action on Medborgarplatsen here in Stockholm with a portrait of Dawit that we asked people to sign, and then we presented it to the Eritrean embassy, but they refused to take it. So people had signed and asked for him to be released. But in the end, the embassy refused to take it, so it's still hanging in the amnesty office here in Stockholm, and we're hoping one day that we will be able to give it to Dawit when he gets to return to Sweden. Let me know if I should...
A couple more minutes.
A couple of more minutes. Great, thank you. We have also worked together with other both civil society groups and several of the groups that will be represented here too, so I'll let you talk more about our joint efforts about handing over letters, for example. But I can just talk about a personal experience I had when we tried to hand over letters of appeal to the Eritrean embassy. As I think many of you know, they don't like to let us in, or they don't like to accept these letters and these appeals. But a colleague and I managed to sneak in during consular hours. They opened the door for someone else, and we just went in. So we sat in the waiting room, and we said we had something that we wanted to hand over. We sat there for a long time, and nobody seemed interested. It wasn't like they weren't upset either, but eventually we handed over the letter and all of these signatures, and I think the person who took it may not have been quite clear and sure of who we were and what we wanted, even though we explained. But she took the letter and the long lists of signatures of people who had signed, and said that they would let the authorities know. So, and I think that's the only time that I myself have been like inside the door of the embassy. But it was quite interesting that they took the letters. I also wanted to say another thing with regards to campaigning and sending letters and keeping the attention up. And it was something that 𝐒𝐄𝐂𝐍𝐃, who is also an Eritrean writer and journalist, and who was present yesterday at the event, he said, never underestimate and forget that even if your letters may not reach the person, the news will probably reach the person, that she or he is not forgotten. Even if there's just one guard of the maybe 15 that you will see as a prisoner, but if one person tells you that there's being noise made about you, there are people in the rest of the world who are writing letters, who are asking about you, they have not forgotten about you, that gives you the strength and the mental strength to cope with being in prison. So I think that's also something that that I bring with me, and that we, as Amnesty, and I think everyone else here, that we bring with us, that what all the little things that we do will help keep the pressure up. So I think that's what I want to leave us all with for this round, is to not think that the things that we do don't make a difference, because all the joint efforts will make a difference.
Thank you, Maya. And then over to Björn. I said that you were one of the persons, or the person most likely to know most about Dawit's case. But how did you first get involved with this case? And could you give us a picture of the work? I mean, you didn't do a lot of legal work with other with international lawyers and Swedish lawyers and so on. Could you give us a picture of what you've been doing in Sweden, but also internationally, because I think you have been at the forefront for bringing that work forward.
Frankly, I don't really remember when I first heard it. It's so long ago, so we used to say it, Silas and I, in the beginning when we were out talking. You know, we hope we don't have to come back next year, but we can come back and come back and come back. And now, in retrospect, I wish I would have documented so much with those first days. So, I guess 2002. I think so. Maybe 2001, but I don't think so. But anyway, in 2002, Reports Without Borders were on board, and we decided to start having a Swedish Press Freedom Prize. So I suggested that Dawit would have that first prize. And I think that was more important than I understood back then, actually, because that helped open some doors, but really in the first years it was tough. We used to get questions like, you know, well, he's done this, he's done that, but he's never been charged with anything. Or people would say, nah, is he really a writer? I've never seen anything he's written. Well, of course not. He's writing in Tigrinya and he's published in Eritrea. How do you expect that we would have seen him? Well, hasn't he written for a Swedish paper? No, he's an Eritrean journalist. So there were so many stupid things that we had to fight. Not once, not twice, but, you know, countless times. And it took so many years. The prize was important, and then that this Free Dawit committee that Elizabeth is chairing came into being in 2004. That meant something. So there were small steps in the beginning, but so many years passed. And book fair in Gothenburg in 2009, walking out, I heard in the loudspeaker system that the next year the theme would be Africa, the literature theme. And then, Jesus, of course we should publish this book, because when he came to Sweden in 1988, in 1986, in 1988 he'd been, by his friend family here, given a computer with Tigrinya language, so he could actually type in Tigrinya. So he had his first book published in Sweden, so you could actually go to a local library in Gothenburg and have his book in Tigrinya. It was there, and you know, then we went there, we had the book translated, we had a beautiful cooperation with 11 publishing houses that went together. They're usually competitors, but now they joined forces, and with an alimony from the Swedish Academy, we paid for translation. Else, everyone was working for free, the paper was for free, everything was for free. And then when the book was published in 2010 at the book fair, that, you know, that was the end of that. Everyone knew that he is a writer, because we published his first book, which is a love story with sort of a Romeo and Juliet setting to it, where tradition and the family, the father and mother of the girl in the story, they don't like the relationship, so it's sort of a teenage love story from Asmara to Lumbly. I mean, it's not like it's political, nothing like bring down the government or anything like that, but it is important. And it was a play that we found that he translated, that he'd written to, that we could put in the book, because he's first and foremost a playwright. And then some newspaper articles that we jointly managed to translate. And one was about AIDS and HIV, a chronicle that he wrote saying that basically we should, make this problem of HIV public so that people can know about the dangers of it. Again, not bring down the government, but asking rather the government to speak up about it. And a story about two villages that were conflicting over a piece of land, where the villagers, they asked for help. They wanted someone from sort of the top town to solve the issue. Again, not bring down the government, but rather let's have open, forthright discussions. And that is so important. That's basically journalism, isn't it? So that said about, I can say much more about how to get attention, but then let's go into the legal side. In 2010, Esaias and I wish we should have done much earlier, but anyway, we contacted Project Bracht, who was heading civil rights defenders here, because the argument that the Eritrean is always...
Excuse me, could you adjust the microphone
okay,
so we can, because we don't want to miss anything.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, better, thank you.
Yeah. I've got glasses, and maybe my ears are not in the right place. Anyway, we contacted Project Bracht, who is a lawyer, and a human rights lawyer, and said, this argument that the Eritreans are using, saying, well, Sweden's got nothing to say because basically he's Eritrean to us, so we don't give a toss about what he did. That's an argument that's been coming back and coming back and coming back. So he wrote a legal opinion based on international law, based on cases in the European Court for Human Rights, etc., where there are cases where the country of Sweden, he being a citizen here, does not only have the right to speak to him, but has a duty to speak for him and to defend him. And that's very clear. So we went to the foreign ministry to give them a bit of a boost. We wrote. Then we went to the European Union, saw the President of the Parliament, raised Chancellery, and we went to the European Commission and gave that legal opinion again, because he's also an EU citizen, so the EU has a right and a duty to speak up for him, which I think neither the Swedish government has done enough, nor the European Union has done enough. Then we got in touch with yet another lawyer through Percy, 𝐒𝐂𝐿𝐴, who is very good at international law. He's never been in the forefront, but people doing a lot of work back home where he's living. So he said we should contact the African Union and the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, which is a body that defends the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, just like the European Court does it. And he said that we can go there. I never heard of him, I didn't know. So what he did was that he wrote a habeas corpus, which is basically an old English tradition where basically it's hundreds of years ago. So basically the one who is the sheriff of Nottingham should not be allowed to lock you up in this cellar without you having a say. You should be tried in court, not for whatever your accusations are, but even for locking you up. You should be able to check that with the court. So we sent this to the High Court in Asmara, and just like what you said before about Publicistro, they have never replied. They've never even admitted to getting this piece of paper. We know they were given it, because actually the European Commission helped us by giving up the segment. So we know for sure that they have it. Then we could go to the African Commission. And that is a quite fantastic institution. When we came there, we've been there together. There are hundreds of people. There are ministers, there are ambassadors, there are people working for human rights in different ways, whether it's for the rights of farmers, or whether it's about the albino question, or whether it's about LGBT, or whether it's on poverty, or imprisonment, death penalty. All these issues are there, and everyone is going there. So you have people in fancy suits, and you have people who walk there in their sandals only. And it's a quite interesting mix. And everyone is given a right to say about their country or about their issue. So we've been there numerous times. After Reporters Without Borders in Sweden, we were accepted as observers, which gave us the right to speak. So we've been speaking and talking about this case. And what's interesting is that, okay, Eritrea is far off from here, but even among those people who are interested in human rights and who work for human rights on the continent, they come to you and say, Jesus, I didn't have any idea that it was so bad in Eritrea. It's a far-off country, it's a small country in Africa, relatively speaking. And still, even there, it is not known how gruesome this regime is treating its population. Thanks to that, we were able to bring the issue there. Thanks to that, we also met with the Eritrean diplomats there. The first years, they were just totally rude. You couldn't really approach them. Aside as you tried talking to them. And when they understood who you were, they just sort of, you just cut off, didn't you? And then all of a sudden, a few years later, the guy I was used to, just being rudely treated. This guy comes up and walks past me, and I just nod to him. He said, "Hello, how are you?" All of a sudden, I was sort of, I've been rude, and then we start talking. So they changed in a way. They listened. We had a meeting several years ago, and possibly I got the explanation a few months later, because one of the guys, he said, there was an Eritrean there who had been to prison too. And they sit there giving you the official line saying, no, this is not true. Well, I was there, I was actually locked in a hole in the ground. Well, that's not true really, they were saying. But after an hour or so of the meeting, the representative said, okay, I thought, okay, I believe you. And then we found out a few months later that this guy defected. So he left the diplomatic service of your government. So possibly that's, he started shifting. And again, even though they said hello, they haven't changed. The rate is still locked up. So is Sahaya, Eldelstam, your friend, Mr Dawit and so many others. And we've not been able to move, but still we brought that issue there. And then going back, I can go on very long, but I need to bring it to the Swedish whole round of ours. In 2014, there was a new law adopted by Parliament here, which for the first time included the legal concepts of genocide and crimes against humanity. It's not like it was possible to go murdering people unpunished here before, but those concepts were brought into Swedish law. So 𝐒𝐂𝐂𝐍𝐃 and Persiplat and our legal coordinator in Paris, where Reporters Without Borders is based, or the headquarters, they wrote a complaint to the Swedish police, or the Swedish prosecution authority, saying that we think Dawit is being subject to crimes against humanity, torture, and forced disappearance, alternatively kidnapping. And we sent that to the Swedish police. That was in 2014, 10 years ago. And it didn't even take 10 working days for the first prosecutor to say, nah, this is nothing, we can't do anything, because Eritrea won't cooperate. We went to the second instance, the chief prosecutor, who came to the same conclusion. Then we actually contacted the Robert Kennedy Center in the United States, and they were sort of outraged about this, so they came to our help and made statements. And in the end, the prosecutor general then, 𝐒𝐂𝐂𝐿, he wrote a very good decision for the first few pages. And then at the end he makes an about turn. But what is important, he says that we have reason to believe and suspect that Dawit is subject to crimes against humanity. We know, or we believe, that not only in his case, but also in the others, the responsibility for this is on the top level in Eritrea. This is something that can be investigated by Swedish police. Maybe not in the case of the president, because heads of state, that's a bit different. But we can also send, included in the complaint, several ministers, the special presidential advisor, and some other people. This sounded really good. But then in the end he says, he went to the Foreign Office here and asked them. Again, the legal system is independent of the government, or should be. And then he came to the conclusion, it was very clear to say that I came to the conclusion that if I want this crime to end, it's more important that they can go on with their negotiations for his liberty. They've been negotiating for 13 years then. And so there will be no investigation. I translated that, went to one of the top professors of human rights law in Africa. He was at the commission meeting, he read the paper and he said, don't you have an independent legal system in Sweden? That was his way of looking at it. We've done that some more times since. In 2020, a same complaint was signed by the former Minister for Justice in Canada, the former High Commissioner for Human Rights, and also a lawyer in the International Criminal Court, Navi Pillai from South Africa. It was signed by Hans Kula, who used to be chairing the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. It was signed by Shirin Ebadi, the Iranian Nobel Peace Prize winner and lawyer. It was signed by several important legal minds from Europe too. Again, nothing. The Swedish prosecution authority even went a step back, saying that, well, it's so difficult to investigate because Eritrea won't cooperate. Oh, you only investigate crimes where the criminal sort of comes forward? Really? So, what they have stopped themselves from doing, which makes me really angry, we have people who are willing to testify. The chairperson of the Security Council of the United Nations, their monitoring commission for Eritrea was agreed to talk. The president of the African Commission was willing to talk to them, and there was a commission, a special commission by the Human Rights Council, which worked for several years. They have collected evidence specifically to help investigators in any country that would want to investigate crimes against humanity. They, in their final statement, they really said that any country that can investigate someone who is suspected of perpetrating crimes against humanity, because we know there are such crimes on a large scale, they said, going on in Eritrea, they should do so. And here is a piece of evidence that you can use. We can't go there, but a legal police or a prosecutor from Sweden could contact them, ask what is in there. So, without really doing anything, they say, it's just impossible. We went back this year, now 10 years after the first complaint, and then we pointed to the case of Hamid Nouri. You know, the guy who was the Iranian guy who was let out in exchange for some stuff. Oh, you were able to really look into that because Iran was cooperating with Sweden? No, Iran was of course not cooperating. So in other words, they've really proven themselves that what they're saying is not true. And yesterday, it was quite ironic. Yesterday, we got the letter to Reporters Without Borders. Yesterday, when we got the Eldelstam Foundation Prize, we got a reply to the latest one saying that, nah, we can't investigate this because eventually there's nothing new in it, just more that 10 years, well, more time has passed in prosecuting rights. Well, that was one of the main points of the latest complaint. He said that the only argument that the first time was used by the Prosecutor General not to investigate was that we must let the negotiations go on. So in this latest appeal we wrote 10 years down the road, after 23 years, we can't wait for the negotiations to give any result. So time was really crucial in this final complaint, and she just writes, well, nothing new, just time has passed. I think that is, no, I shan't say what I really think, but it's really outrageous, it's an affront. And I don't really know what to do.
Thank you, Björn. We share your anger, I would say, at least in this panel. Karin, as I mentioned, it took a long time before media reacted, and I said that as well. But I would say that Express has been at the forefront when you got started. And I would like to know how come that you feel that this is such an important case to work. Maybe it's very simple answer, but still I would like to know that. I mean, you've been to so many manifestations. We've been outside the embassy, we've been outside many times. We have started different campaigns, we have had appeal letters, and you also had a huge campaign many years ago. Maya and I was involved. I worked for Amsterdam, and where we have world artists signing letters on behalf of like Bruce Springsteen and Metallica and others. Could you tell us a bit about the work at Expressen and also why? Please.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the invitation to this panel. Well, I'd like to start with the beginning. As we heard here several times, Swedish media was very slow at the start, very, very slow. And I think, yes, it was a lot of things going on in the world, like 9/11 and whatnot. I can't remember, but there was a lot of news going on, as always. And I think that the editors felt okay. They didn't recognize this news with Dawit Isaak. They hadn't experienced it before. And I think they felt, okay, that's his problem. This is not urgent for the majority of the Swedes. I think Sweden was very immature as a multicultural country back then. I think that's why they didn't perceive this as important news. So it was reported, but in a very small scale, some small pieces here and there. I think it wasn't until Expressen engaged in the story that it grew. Then many years had passed already. And it was the former editor-in-chief of Expressen, Thomas Mansson, and I think he was engaged in a very personal way. He felt that this is not right. Why are we not writing about Dawit Isaak? Had this been a white journalist from Dagens Nyheter or Aftonbladet, then we would be writing every day about this man. So I think this was very deeply felt for him, and he started a company. He made a special page on the Expressen website that was called Free Dawit, and it was updated all the time with news articles and initiatives. As you mentioned, Elizabeth, we have asked the Pope about Dawit Isaak, Bruce Springsteen, the King. Everyone we could even think of could have some leverage and some impact in this case. Expressen initiated a campaign, an article written by the famous author Peter Englund, and member of the Swedish Academy. He wrote an article about Dawit Isaak. It was printed in 91 Swedish papers in one day. And I think that is the largest manifestation for freedom of speech we have seen in Sweden, actually. So Thomas Mansson engaged editors all over the country, and I think the commitment of his and Expressen inspired a lot of other people to engage in the case too, and made it more well known. And still today, every day in the printed paper and in our website, we count the days that Dawit Isaak has been imprisoned. So it's updated every day. How many days he has been in prison? To remind the audience about this case and to remind ourselves about the case. This is important because freedom of speech is a core value for Expressen and also for the family that owns Expressen, the family of Bonnier. They have worked in the publishing industry in almost 200 years and have many times fought for freedom of speech in Sweden. So this is a core value of the company. And it should be a core value for every person in Sweden who feels that it's important with free journalism, that it's important with freedom of speech. And over the years, as you mentioned, Elizabeth, we have been engaged in so many campaigns. We have participated in manifestation. I have asked Dawit Isaak's daughter, Bethlehem Isaak, to write in Expressen. We have tried in every way we can to give some attention to the case. I think the last years, the energy in the campaign for Dawit Isaak has been a bit slower than before. That is something to reflect on. I think the Eldelstam Prize has been more written about internationally than in Sweden. Why is that? So I think some of the energy from back in the days has been less strong.
Thank you. Well, we've gone through a lot during these 23 years, and I think we should turn over to the present situation. What makes this case so difficult is, of course, that we don't have any proof of life. I mean, since there's no communication with the family, there's no communication with Swedish authorities, and we have no proof of life from Dawit himself. And despite thousands and thousands of letters, I mean, we have never received any response from these letters. And like all other colleagues who were arrested in September 2001, I mean, they have no legal representation, they are incommunicado. And of course, this is such an extreme breach of international law. I mean, to bring someone to a prison and let him be there for 23 years without any accusation, without an indictment, without trial. But we have to find ways to continue, and I think, like you said, I mean, the Eldelstam Prize has been mentioned in so many international media, which I think is quite unprecedented. I mean, we haven't had very much interest about this situation in Eritrea in international media, so I think this is a very good start to really focus more on what we can do. What I would like to know now is I mean, you don't have to take charts like this, but what options do we have to put pressure on Eritrea? We've tried so many different campaigns, and a bit slower sometimes, and then we pop up and do some big things again. And of course, I mean, there's a fatigue. I mean, I've been working on this case for many years, and I'm also the president of the Free Dawit committee, and I have to be very active, but many others are as well. But how can we find ways to put even more pressure on Eritrea? And also, what can we do from a Swedish point of view? I mean, there is criticism when it comes to how the Swedish government has reacted. We know that the reactions you got were absolutely terrible. I mean, they didn't even recognize that he was a Swedish citizen in the beginning. But that's history now. And what kind of pressure can we put on Swedish authorities and also on Eritrea? And how can we make use of this international attention now? The floor is yours. Who wants to start?
I can start. I think it must be uncomfortable for the Eritrean government to work here, because for them it's not a problem for them to do what they want to do with us, Eritrea, here. And for the first, I mean, you said we want to look forward, but almost it took 8 months for the Swedish government to react. Dawit was arrested in September 2001, and the first reaction was in May 2002. And I think we lost a lot of time at that, and then maybe the Eritrean government said, oh, they are not interested about his case. And still they didn't cost them anything to arrest Dawit. One could be to maybe say that the official of the Eritrean government should not have more in this area to walk and to do something. And also to look what the kind of activity they have here in Sweden with their different agents and like their festivals. But some of this maybe is also against the democracy, the freedom of the meeting and everything. So it's quite difficult, and sometimes I feel, I don't know, I have done a lot of things, and we'll see whether the panel have any new fresh idea maybe.
Who wants to begin?
Well, I'm thinking a bit. So, I mean, Eritrea being here is a sign of that the European Union is much more effective than you have really been able to see in the way that, okay, you have David's family here, but in Germany you have ERISAT's, well, family per se, and you have the family of 𝐒𝐄𝐂𝐎𝐍𝐃, well, his sister lives here, and her daughter has been doing an international campaign, but his family lives in France. So there's so many countries affected by this, but it's never come up to the surface really. That I think should be used. Then again, the European Union is what it is, and Italy used to be the colonial power of Eritrea, so you know they have sort of closer relationships. It could be used, but it could also be man-used, which I think it has been. So it's not an easy going, but to make the European Union move would really be something. And also in terms of our legal trials, I mean, you might think, why do they go on? Well, the hope was sort of to achieve a bit of this, which Isaias mentioned, to make it more difficult for them. By the decision yesterday, you could say that the prosecution authority just said, good luck, go on breaking the law, violating the human rights of the Swedish citizen, nothing will happen. Because now they can come here. We would have wanted them to be a bit fearful of coming here, not knowing if they would be brought in for investigation, because the special advisor of the president has been here over the years, the Minister for Defence, the former Minister for Defence, his sister lives here in Stockholm, so we would come here privately sometimes. So there are chances, and you could also use the legal powers within the European Union. So that was sort of one of the ideas, but it seems to fail miserably.
Yeah.
Is it possible to ask questions?
Could you stand up and get the microphone, please?
No, I will get my point.
Oh,
Is it
okay.
possible to raise a legal case against the Swedish Authority of Justice for not investigating this case?
Yes, we're thinking about that.
That's
Bringing Sweden to the Committee Against Torture for failure to act to protect the Swedish citizen from torture. That is one thing we're thinking of, but if you have any better ideas, please. Because I think it is a failure to protect one of its citizens. There are chances, there have been chances, and they're still not taking them.
Maya?
Yes, I agree with what you said. I think it would be wonderful if the European Union could take more active steps and also in dialogue with the African Union and using universal jurisdiction that you were talking about. But I would also like to talk about the foreign ministry here in Sweden. You said before we're looking forward, but because amnesty also works with other cases of Swedish citizens who have been detained abroad, I would say that my impression, and this is now talking for myself, but as an amnesty staff member, I am not sure that the Swedish Foreign Ministry has learned all that they could have learned from your example, because we still hear from family members and relatives from Swedish citizens who have in different countries gotten in trouble or been detained, been tortured. So I think one of the recommendations would be for the Swedish Foreign Ministry to pick up more of the learnings from what went wrong with regards to your brother, and to have a better communication and dialogue with family members and relatives. And it's not that it is the responsibility of the family members and relatives, because it is not. I know so many family members end up becoming these campaigners, and this was not what they had planned to do with their lives, and they're kind of forced into this activist role. But it is the duty of the foreign ministry, it is the duty of Sweden to do everything that they can. And with that comes, I think, the duty to listen and learn and have a close dialogue with these family members and relatives who know so much. They have often such vast knowledge of the situations. And I think this is something that is still not happening. I know in other countries, including the United States, there's been discussions of starting specific departments, specific groups within the foreign ministry that will have as its sole purpose to be a liaison and to work with family members and relatives of their citizens who have been imprisoned abroad. And I think this is something that increasingly we see that there is need for in Sweden, so that we do not repeat the mistakes that have happened here.